welcome to another episode of the Sports Guys. This is another one in the series of history, rules of, and popularity of the game. We've had a bunch of really great episodes in this series. And now this week, we're taking on baseball, one of the great pastimes in United States history and in America. Comes out of some really ancient games, which we'll talk about tonight. And we'll get into kind of the history of baseball. And the only way to really do it is to take a look at all the old photos of all the great players. So we're going to take you through kind of a walk down memories lane of all the different great photos and great players. How you doing, Robbie?
Oh, doing great. Doing great. Very excited about this episode. Can't remember how long ago we planned it, but it's been one that I've been excited about. The boys are playing baseball these days. We have a family tradition and of watching baseball. Uncle play. It's the boys' grandfather played Major League Baseball, so it's been something I've been looking forward to. Really excited.
It is interesting that your boys and a lot of the young kids are starting to come back to the game again. The baseball was slipping for a couple of generations, and it
It
seems like
seems
this
like it. There
generation's
was a
coming back.
there was a negative reaction with the steroid era, where I think young people kind of thought it wasn't cool because it had this stigma, and then
Mhm.
that's kind of gone now. And I think people are starting to pull back from football because of the injuries, and they're funneling their kids into baseball because it's much safer.
Mhm. That's true.
So it's kind of cool to see the comeback. Plus, there's a lot of good baseball to be watched. That a lot of good players these days. Very exciting players. So
Do you think it's also that it's a summer sport and the kids are out of school and they can play a lot of baseball and they get on traveling teams and they play in summer leagues, and you think
yeah,
that's
like
part of it?
for instance, you just nailed it. It's during the summer. What else is during the summer? Nothing.
Right. Right. There's no
If it
competition.
you go to the beach and that's great, but if it rains, you're kind of stuck inside. So watching baseball is easy. It doesn't compete with anything. So you have baseball competing with nothing. Whereas right now, are you going to watch the NBA game or are you going to watch the hockey game? You got to make a decision, and you really want to watch both. You're swinging back and forth. You're afraid you're going to miss something huge. You definitely tune in at the end of each game. But there's competition. It's too bad there's so much competition, but it's great for the viewer. But at the same time, if your sport doesn't compete with anything, you're gonna have a lot more success. I think the NFL doesn't compete with very much for the most part.
So
So
that's with the kids. That's with the kids. But I think the
yeah,
popularity is also coming back a little bit with the public, the consuming public, the adults, because
yeah,
baseball's made some really good tweaks in the last couple of years to make it more exciting, to make the game shorter.
yeah.
The games are now taking an average of 20 minutes less than they did just 5 years ago.
It's
And
shorter, faster. It's more TV friendly. Um, there's less pitching changes.
mhm.
It's good. Like they've done a really good job of taking a hard look in the mirror and identifying where their weaknesses were.
The
So
only complaint I would have right now, and I still think it's going to get better, I think they're going to get more and more good at this, but that is they don't do as good a job as the NBA or the NFL in marketing their star players.
agreed.
They've got to find a way to do that because that's going to take them to the next level in terms of popularity.
Well,
But
when you have star players, you have kids look up to the star players, and your league is stronger. You have a stronger foundation of youth baseball or youth sports. Um, I'm really worried for football's future because as it gets stronger and stronger, it sounds insane, but I think the foundation of football is not strong. The fundamentals are strong. The business side is just exploding. The smartest thing they can do is go international because that'll solidify, and then America will never let up wanting to be the best at football. So, but I'm worried about their youth football leagues. It seems like not in a healthy place. I think youth baseball is in a pretty good place, and all the steroid stigma is kind of gone now. It's been
mhm.
long enough away from then. So you've got a pretty good feel towards baseball. You want your kid playing it because it's an athletic event, but it's safer,
Mhm.
and it's pretty exciting to watch as long as you keep it moving and it's
Did
not
you notice?
bogged down in breaks.
Did you notice in the last 3 weeks they reinstated Mark McGuire, they've reinstated Jose
Yeah,
Canseco, they've reinstated Barry Bonds, And yesterday they just reinstated the late Pete Rose, who
He
passed away
wrote.
unfortunately, but they're setting him up, I think, to go into the Hall. Is that
Absolutely.
right?
It speaks to the healing that's happened from the steroid era and then Pete Rose, the decision to keep him out. I think if they could go backward, they probably would have put him in already. But
So all these guys who are the pariahs of the game over those 2 decades, they're all
yeah,
being reinstated now, and the healing has happened.
yep. And that's good for the game. That's good for the game. You see the stadium starting to fill again. Decent TV contracts. It slipped a lot, but it's kind of solidified itself and stabilized.
We'll take
And
a look at the numbers later, but you'll see the participation at the youth level and the attendance at the games is increasing again the last 2 years. So they've turned the corner,
absolutely.
and they're coming back a little bit more. So
They
it's
did the
good.
hard work of making changes to the way that the game is played, and they kept all the best parts of baseball, and they got rid of a lot of the negatives.
So tell me about your earliest recollections of watching baseball, loving baseball, either at the MLB or the college level or even youth level.
My
And
earliest
then and then
recollection.
and
Go
then
ahead.
let's talk about, today, what is it that you love about MLB? What is it that you love about College World Series?
Um, so some of the earliest recollections, we had an unusual growing up where we were in and out of the country. So we have little holes in our um, TV viewing and sports following and music. And we always came back to the country and tried to catch up where we left off and what we missed. But early on, I remember a couple of things. One of them was watching Dr. J play basketball. And then one of the earliest memories is coming back to the U.S. and going to Red Sox games with our grandfather up in Boston. And that's kind of where we started really enjoying it. We loved our grandfather so much. He was one of our favorite people of all time. And going with him was a treat. Going anywhere with him was a treat. So going to games was a treat. And then being from the DC area, we loved the Orioles, and we were going to Orioles games with Dad. So just a lot of good memories of the Red Sox and the Orioles. And then we go out of the country again for 3 years, and then come back and kind of pick up where we left off. So that was I remember Jim Rice and Dennis Eckersley pitching for the Red Sox.
And Yastrzemski was still there. We
Yastrzemski was
saw
still
him
there.
play twice. Yeah.
He was on the tail end of his career. And then, of course, the Orioles, Jim Palmer,
Mike
Cal Ripken,
Flanagan,
Mike Flanagan,
McGregor,
Eddie
Cal
Murray.
Ripken. Yeah.
Yeah,
They had a great team.
that was amazing. So you had the tail end of some of those guys, the pitchers and everything, meeting the young Cal Ripken coming in with Eddie Murray. And that's kind of what my early memories are.
Mine are mostly Orioles and Red Sox as well. For me, when I really fell in love with the game was looking up at the Green Monster for the first time when Granddad took us to Fenway Park.
Mm-hmm.
Looked up at the Green Monster, and I was a kid, and I just thought to myself, this game is unbelievable. I don't know if there would have been any impression like that than Fenway Park, which is just such a special place. So that was awesome to go to those games with him. And I remember when we were at his house, he would watch the game every single day. I don't know if you remember that. He always had a little
Yeah,
TV on in the corner.
yeah.
And it didn't matter what we were doing. We could be out fishing or doing whatever, but he always had to run in at 1 o'clock in the afternoon to go watch the Red Sox game. And
And
there
it
was
really
just
made him upset when they lost.
that tradition in America. I mean, there was times where they were listening to it on the radio. Baseball
Yeah.
was a radio sport, and so I can understand it. Even looking through this photo journey we're about to go through, why America fell in love with baseball. It really became America's pastime.
What I loved was that it was a very leisure sport to be in the stadium. It wasn't wildly intense, but it had moments of massive intensity, where everything goes, home run or diving catch or,
Yeah,
very calm, very great sport to bring your son to, not worrying about some guy drunk behind you screaming expletives and throwing beer on the players and
hmm
if fights in the
it was
stands. It
it was
wasn't
the big
intense like that. It was very, very cool sport to watch when you're young and impressionable and just learning how to cheer for something like a sport.
it was the big home runs. It was the big hits. It was the big rally innings where they would get 5 or 6 runs.
Yeah,
And then
Stool.
on the other side, you would be on the edge of your seat if you were pitching. Your team was pitching, and the bases were loaded with 1 out, and you had Mike Flanagan up on the mound, and he was trying to get out of the jam. That was also just as exciting because everyone's on their feet. Can he get out of this?
Yeah.
He's in a really bad spot right now, and when he did, the place would go crazy. So those were my earliest memories, and then I really totally fell in love with baseball in 1983. It was Cal Ripken's rookie year, 1983, and Eddie Murray and that great pitching staff. All 4 pitchers were Hall of Fame caliber.
Rick Dempsey behind the plate.
Rick Dempsey and Cal Ripken Sr., his dad, was at third base. He was the third base coach, and he was actually the assistant manager. And they won the World Series that year against the Phillies, 4-2 in that series. And after that, I was done. I was a lifelong Orioles fan after that.
And I remember Dempsey used to come out during rain delays, and he dressed like a clown. And he would pretend like he's playing, and he would hit the ball, and he'd go sliding into first, and he got soaking wet. It was hilarious.
Every rain delay, he would come out and do some kind of.
He was just total character that the crowd fell in love with. And he was entertaining the crowd, and it was so funny. And I don't know, you couldn't do that today. The team would be upset that you're risking injury or something. I don't know, but
I will say baseball, one thing they do is they do the stadiums well. If you watch any of the games, they've got the chicken, he's going around with the kids. They've got in Washington, they have that tradition where all the presidents run around the track.
Yeah.
And they'll let one guy run with them, and they're running, and everyone's rooting like for Washington and Jefferson, and it's just hilarious.
And then there's the dude
who does it well. They do it
well. There's a guy who's dressed like entirely, you can't see his face.
Right.
And he's so fast, and they let the guy go first.
They make him start
Flash go later, and he tries to catch him. It's hilarious.
Yeah. So I think
a lot of good mascots in baseball too.
I don't know if baseball does the TV portion of it as well as the other sports, but they do the stadium portion of it very well. They really do for the whole family.
Yeah.
Everyone's got a hot dog, and they've got peanuts. And get your peanuts here. It's just a fun atmosphere in the summer.
Cool experience. Yeah.
So those were my earliest memories. And then in terms of College World Series, I mean, once Virginia baseball started getting good, obviously I started getting interested. Then they started going to the College World Series. They had the one year where they lost in the final, which was heartbreaking, 2-1 against
Vanderbilt.
And then 1 year later, they came back and won it against Vanderbilt, which was really exciting to get kind of revenge there. But ever since about 2012 or so, I've been very hooked on College World Series. It's an incredible event.
It's so exciting.
So I don't know. I really, my love for baseball came out of those two kind of streams of consciousness. Well, let's go take this journey with everybody. Look at the history of baseball. All right, well, let's take a moment just to give a shout out to our sponsor for tonight, and that is Jersey Mike's. We're really happy to have them back on board with the Sports Guyz. I just finished off one half of the number 13, which of course is my favorite sandwich, the original Italian. And it was delicious, and I'll have the other half tomorrow for lunch. So what do you think of Jersey Mike's, Robbie?
Oh, I love it. I've had it twice this week. I almost usually get it on when we're having a podcast. And my girlfriend gets the buffalo chicken, so it's pretty popular in our house.
Nice, it's delicious. It's just so fresh. The people are so friendly. They're easy to find. They're all around you.
It's affordable. It's filling. It's fresh. It's easy to get. It's quick, and like you said, the service is extremely friendly.
It is, and I even like eating there sometimes too. Actually, their restaurants are kind of fun to sit outside or sit inside, whatever.
Yeah, when you come visit me in Raleigh, we usually go there, and sometimes we eat there, and it's a great place. We love that place.
Well, guys, check out your local Jersey Mike's store. Go to jerseymikes.com, where you can get one of the DoorDash or Uber Eats guys to deliver one to you or a couple to you, and check it out as soon as you can. And we'll see you next time.
It's a sub above, no question. Sub above.
Take care. All right, so this is our baseball episode 63, History, Rules, and Popularity of the Game. What an epic photo there on the top. That is Babe Ruth's last at-bat in Yankee Stadium, and he was about to say goodbye to the people. That was his last at-bat. And I don't think there's anybody still who is as epic or legendary as Babe Ruth. to the game of baseball and the development of baseball. What do you think?
Not at all. Yeah, I just saw an interview with Ken Burns, who's a famous historian. He did a famous show on baseball, and he said the greatest player of all time, most influential, was Babe Ruth,
I think so.
and
I mean,
second he believed was Willie Mays.
Willie Mays. Yeah, probably
You
so.
know, and then he said that he interviewed a ton of players and coaches, and they thought third was Barry Bonds.
Barry Bonds. Yeah, I could see that.
So,
Unbelievable hitter.
yeah.
One of the greatest hitters ever. Even though he did have the stain on his record because of the steroids, but
Yeah, but they said that a lot of the players defended him, even though they said we don't defend the steroids. But they said what steroids doesn't help you do is hand-eye coordination.
mm-hmm.
And they said the way he was able to hit any pitcher anytime, he got walked all the time because pitchers realized they could not pitch to him.
No, that's right.
You know, the
I
only
do
one
wonder though.
hitting wise in the modern era was Tony Gwynn.
I do wonder how he would do in the modern game. I know it's not fair to think about it, but I do think about it because I think to myself, the guy was really out of shape, right?
Are
He
you
could
talking about
barely,
Babe Ruth?
yeah, Babe Ruth. He could barely run the bases. And I'm just thinking to myself, if he was up against these masterful pitchers that have like 6 pitches in their bag, I do wonder how he would have done. But
I don't
yeah,
think he could have gotten as out of shape as he was then. Modern day diet and modern day exercise routines and standards, I think he would have stayed in a little better shape. He might have been able to compete.
he still
But
had the hand-eye
he had an
coordination.
absolute amazing amount of power.
Yeah, he
Like
did.
he had farm boy strength that just
You got to realize that he was hitting balls that don't jump as much as the current balls, right? And he
right.
was using a bat that didn't jump as much as the current bats. So his
Yeah.
equipment wasn't anywhere close to as good, and he's still jacking it out of Yankee Stadium, which was
He
about
had
340.
714 home runs with balls that weren't as juiced.
Right,
So
exactly.
I think he would have been okay.
There's a criticism, though, that he and others, Maris and all these guys, were playing a lot of teams that had halftime players. Some of them had, outside jobs and
Yeah.
things like that. There's that criticism too, but I just don't agree with that. I think these guys were professional athletes, and you really can't compare 1903 to
No, you can't.
2025. It's just a different type of athlete.
Yeah.
So another great picture there to the right. You see how far the ball has come. That ball to the left was the 1901 ball.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see what's happened in 124 years
Yeah.
to the baseball. A couple other great logos there on the left. What the Yankees logo used to look like in 1903. The Boston Braves, the Detroit Tigers in 1894. That's what their logo looked like. And this was the Orioles logo in 1958, which is pretty funny. So, what do you think of those logos?
They're pretty cool. They're pretty cool. I like them.
Yeah,
What's interesting is how much changing of the names have happened in baseball, much more than the other sports.
I think so.
Yeah, the Pittsburgh Pirates existed back in 1903, the first World Series, but
Hmm.
the Boston Americans played them and won the first
Hmm.
World Series.
Right.
Boston Americans, then it became the
Hmm.
Boston Braves, and then it
You
ultimately
did.
ended Red Sox.
You did have the New York Yankees, and then across town you had the Brooklyn Dodgers. And speaking of the Brooklyn Dodgers, you see Jackie Robinson there in the middle. What an incredible photograph of the guy who stole home 4 times in his career. And you see him there taunting the catcher after he rounds third. What a terrifying sight that would have been if you're a catcher. This
Yeah,
guy, this guy was just unbelievable. He stole every base he wanted, anytime he wanted. It was crazy. How would you like to have been the catcher against this guy?
he was a superior athlete. I wouldn't, I would not have liked it.
No.
It'd be like Bo Jackson coming around the corner, like, no thanks.
And he broke the color barrier in so many ways. Before this, it was all Negro League for
Mm.
African Americans. And then, of course, Jackie Robinson was the first star in Major League Baseball that was
Mm.
African American. So he really was a groundbreaker.
He was the first African American player in 1947.
That's right.
So just think about it. World War II had just ended.
You have to realize the popularity of the game had been growing since the 1860s and right after the Civil War, growing and growing and growing. Then you have Babe Ruth in that early 1900s. And then you have Willie Mays, and you have Roger Maris, and you have DiMaggio, and all these guys. And then you come all the way to 1947, Jackie Robinson.
Yeah, and just
Yeah,
think, World War II had just ended, and the patriotism surge was just powerful, and all of our heroes had come back from the war who had to go fight, the ones that did. And everybody was back. America's pastime in a super patriotic charged country. We were proud of what we had done. It was a pretty wild time, really good time for baseball, you know?
It was. It was. And now you had two good teams in New York on either side of New York. You had Brooklyn and New York.
Yeah.
What do you think of the current logos? Those are all the 32 teams right now.
I like them.
They've even changed really in the last 20 years. I mean, I was looking
Yeah.
at some of these like, wow, that changed a lot.
Yeah, there's been a lot of marketing teams that have really understood how you do logos and different kind of branding.
Mhm.
They've gotten a lot better at making things pop. They use
Mhm.
computers and they do a lot of surveying and polling of people. Which one of these looks better? They've done a lot of psychological studies on what pleases the eye. They're just doing such a better job with logos.
You know what's interesting is you can sell more merchandise if you have new logos
Of course.
because people want to buy the new stuff. But guess
Yeah.
what? It creates this huge market of vintage stuff that
Yeah.
everyone loves, especially in baseball: cards, shirts, hats. And what they found is that the sales of the old vintage logos, like let's say the Orioles adopted a new one, their old Orioles logo stuff would also sell more. So they both sell more. It's kind of an
Yeah.
interesting phenomenon.
If you look at
Uh,
those balls, over the history of baseballs, they've always been either cork or rubber interior,
mhm.
covered in leather for the most part. So it's been interesting how sometimes they're more juiced, sometimes they're more dead, and it just depends on if they want to favor the pitchers or the hitters.
You know, that 1901 ball does not look very easy to hit.
No,
Like I can't imagine trying to hit that
it
340
looks
feet
like
out.
something out of cricket. You know?
I know. Well, and that's where it came from, really.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Let's look at the history of baseball. Baseball, now one of national pastimes of the United States, evolved from various stick and ball games played in Europe and North America. The first recorded game was in Hoboken, New Jersey, June 19th, 1846. So you're talking about, 20 something years before the Civil War. The game's popularity grew, leading to the formation of the first professional league, which was called the National Association in 1871. And then it was followed by a successful National League in 1876. So that was the first real pro league that we recognize today, 1876. Baseball like games existed in various forms in ancient times, with traces of bat and ball games dating back to ancient Egypt in 3000 BC. So very similar to bocce. They're finding these kind of bat and ball games in the hieroglyphs in Egypt as well. So games like cricket and la Soule from France and rounders in England, they're considered possible precursors to baseball. In the United States, they had games like stool ball and old cat and trap ball were all played in the United States. And so they believe that baseball is really a combination of all six of these with different elements, all included. By the mid 19th century, two distinct versions of baseball emerged. You had the Massachusetts game with overhand pitching and a rectangular field. So, not the diamond we have today, it was rectangular. And then
Mm.
you have the New York game that was underhand pitching with a diamond shaped field that we use today. So, it's really interesting that these two games developed in a different way. The New York Knickerbockers played a key role in popularizing the New York game of baseball, leading to its dominance. So the only thing they really adopted from the Massachusetts game was the overhand pitching. Everything
Mhm.
else pretty much was the New York game. So Alexander Cartwright and the Knickerbockers developed a set of rules in 1845, which formed the basis of modern baseball. The National League that was established in 76, then the American League came along in 1901, and that led to the first World Series in 1903, which was between the two leagues. So any thoughts on the history of baseball and kind of this development of the game and then into the pro leagues?
It's pretty cool how it's a combination of different ideas from a variety of places, but it still has a unique feel. When I watch some of these other games, I don't immediately think of baseball. It looks like a pretty decent compromise that they made on some
Mhm.
pieces from the Massachusetts game, some from the New
Mhm.
York game. Combine them and get them get everybody playing the same thing. So that's cool.
And then apparently the National League was trying to prevent the American League from being formed in 1901. But once it was, the representatives from both met and said, let's have a World Series. This would be brilliant.
Yeah.
So really
If you can't beat them, join them.
Exactly. So you're talking 125 years ago, these leagues were formed. And now, of course, we're enjoying the World Series even today.
Yeah.
So really interesting history behind the game of baseball. Let's look at these 6 games that it came from. The first one is La Soule from France. And what it is really interesting. It looks like a Viking game. It's a game where they tackle each other, they punch each other, they hit. You have 3 bases that you have to run around. You have a stick in your hand, and you have to hit the ball with the stick. And then you have to run around the bases. So it's almost like, rounders, but with a real physical nature. You can tackle people who are trying to run around the bases.
Mm-hmm.
So what a wild game. It really, when I looked at a little bit of the clips of it, because they still play it in France, it really looks like a combination of rugby and rounders. That's what it looks like. Any thoughts about that game?
Looks like something I'd like to play.
Rugby baseball.
Yeah, let's go.
The next one down there is cricket, which is obviously incredibly popular in England and was very popular.
In India.
And India, yeah. But back then, apparently England was very divided. So you had rounders mostly in southern England, and you had cricket kind of London and north. So I found that really interesting that these 2 games kind of divided the country. You had cricket, which of course has 2 bases. Rounders has 3 bases. So it's kind of like a triangle field.
Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts about those 2?
Well, I mean, cricket is not widely known in the U.S., not widely played, but is the second largest sport in the world and is a tremendous parallel sport to baseball. In my mind, I think it's the closest
I do
thing
too.
that I've seen.
And rounders is pretty darn close too. I mean, they're running around 3 bases.
Agreed.
There's
But
pitching.
nobody knows rounders. Like it's
I know.
not played in Germany or in Japan,
Although apparently it was played in early U.S. as well. They played a lot of rounders.
Probably so, and it's probably evolved into the main sports. But yeah, cricket's one of those ones where it can't be overstated how popular it is around the world. It is huge.
It is.
It's soccer, cricket, and then bocce. Like those are
That's right.
three most popular sport pastimes that there
Pro
is.
leagues and everything. I mean, in India, you drive around. I was there in 2013, and about every other billboard was a cricket professional who I didn't know who they were, but apparently they're like the biggest athletes in India, are the crickets.
Yeah.
The cricket guys.
One cool thing is there's a movie out. I recommend everybody go see it. My friend Brett is actually in it. It's called $1 Million Arm, and it's a movie about baseball. But
Great movie.
this talent scout goes to India and finds these 2 cricket bowlers. They're called bowlers, which is like pitchers, and they have such strong arms and such accuracy that they train them up. And it's a true story. It's a Disney movie, and it's a true story. They make it to the big leagues, these 2 Indian guys, and it's just amazing, because they come from these small towns that are, very populated in India, and cricket is the sport that gives them the foundation, and they can cross over to baseball. So there's enough similarity to where that really happened, and it's a cool movie. So check it out, $1 Million Arm.
Yeah, it's a great movie. I agree. I was really happy to see Brett in that one.
Yeah.
So next sport was
he's the boyfriend of the female lead.
Yes. Yeah, I remember that scene. It's a good one.
Yeah.
I'll put a little link down below to that movie. You guys can check it out. It's pretty good. So next sport is stool ball. You see it up there on the top. That was played in northern cities in the United States. Started in Philadelphia. It was essentially rounders is what it was, but they called it stool ball because it had the 3 bases. And men and women would play it. Women would even play in their dresses, as you can see there. And they would hit the ball and they would run in these dresses. And when you get to the base, you sit in a stool. So there was 3 stools on the 3 bases. So once you get to the base, you don't step on a plate, you sit in the stool. It was almost like musical chairs.
Yeah.
So it was the musical chairs version of rounders. Really interesting.
Very
That's almost,
civilized game.
yeah, and all the women are playing in their dresses and men in their suits. So that's stool ball. The next one is trap ball, and you can see what a modern trap ball looks like. They still play it. And what it is you have to take your little paddle there and you have to hit that little lever that pops the ball up and you have to catch it on the paddle and you have to carry it across the field from base to base. And other people are trying to whack the ball out of your hand, almost like lacrosse.
Yeah, it's kind of like lacrosse.
Yeah, and you have to make it around the three bases and make it back to the trap to get a run. So, and you're trying to carry it like a lacrosse stick, but you don't have a net. You have to carry it on that little paddle. So really interesting. That's trap ball. So that was played in the United States as well. And the final one played in the U.S. was also like rounders. They called it Old Cat. And you can see it there. It's also a three-base game. And the only difference between it and rounders was the pitcher could throw to two different bases. There was two home plates essentially, and he could throw to either one. You didn't know which one he was going to throw it to, and both batters had to be ready from the same team. That was called Old Cat. And once you hit it, you'd have to run around the three bases to make a run. So really interesting variation of rounders there. Any thoughts on these games that are U.S. based?
Just fascinating old sports that nobody has heard of or plays or anything that were the foundational pieces that were put together to make baseball. It's kind of interesting.
Doesn't seem like Old Cat would be something that kids would make up. Like rounders is
Yeah.
boring. Let's have two bats. Let's have two
Yes.
bats and you can pitch to either one.
Yeah.
That's what it seems like to me. Yeah, this is really fascinating history here. That baseball really took a little tiny piece out of all of these. So looking at some of the old logos, we looked at a couple already, but some of these old programs are really fascinating. This one on the left here, the 1940 World Series, 25 cents for the program. And that was between the Cincinnati Reds and Detroit Tigers. Then you had a 1960 Yankees program. And what I was struck by was all these incredible players they had on the same team. Doesn't seem fair. You had Ruth and DiMaggio and Maris. And I mean, it was
Yeah.
essentially the entire team were Hall of Famers.
It was an all-star Hall of
It's
Fame.
just crazy. Like,
Yeah.
it just doesn't seem fair. And then you had the 1918 World Series there. That was Red Sox. Actually, was played at Fenway Park back then. You played home and home series, just like we do today. You have the Boston Braves logo there. I thought that was really interesting. That was when the team was in Boston, hadn't moved to Atlanta yet. And then there's a program here that was at Victory Field in Indianapolis in the Negro League. This was a Negro League game, and that was the program. Kansas City Monarchs against the Harlem Stars. It's really interesting there to look at some of this old memorabilia. Any thoughts?
Just very historical, cool to run through the history and see where all the foundations are for all these teams that exist today for the most part.
Imagine if the Yankees had this team today. They'd have like a $600 million payroll.
They kind of do have that team every year, Tom.
I know. Not quite this,
On
though.
some level.
This was like, they had like 10 of the top 20 players in baseball history.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Pretty wild. What do you think of the Orioles logo from 1958?
I mean, it's pretty. It's kind of looks like a kid drew it. Like,
Right.
I don't know. I don't love it.
Yeah. Interesting history, though. Right.
Very. Yeah.
So this was a great photo I picked out of the archives. This is a bunch of people watching a game in the 1960 World Series in Pittsburgh. And they're looking down at the field, and they're on the 20th story of a building in Pittsburgh. What a wild way to watch the game. It's probably a little bit of alcohol being imbibed and a lot of photos being taken. So what do
Yeah.
you think about watching a game from this perch?
I mean, even today, that'd be a cool view, just in the city, you're in skyscrapers.
Could you
I
see
think
enough
that's,
of the game, though? I don't know.
I
Like,
don't think you can watch it all that
want to
well.
be closer. I want to be able to see the actual hit. I want to be able to see the
Yeah.
home run. Yeah. I don't
Yeah.
know. It's kind of cool, though. I don't know.
It's cool. You're with your friends and work
Yeah.
colleagues, and
Yeah.
you're seeing kind of what's happening, but not
Mhm.
in detail.
It's interesting. That's 9 years before I was born. So really, really interesting photo there. So here is an interesting photo here on the top left of how the catchers used to stand back in the 1940s. They didn't used to crouch down like they do today. And what do you think of that? Do you think you could be effective as a catcher standing up like that? I don't know.
I mean, I don't know. They were pretty light on equipment.
Yeah.
They weren't throwing probably 104 miles an hour like they are
They were
today.
not throwing anywhere as hard as they do today. That's true.
No.
But I don't know. This doesn't look very comfortable to me. It looks like it would hurt his back. And when
It
you're
looks
not
like there would be
crouched down,
problems.
when you're not crouched down, I have to think they had a lot of pass balls, probably. You know, I would think.
Maybe. Although you can get to them a lot quicker and easier that way.
True. It's more like a fielding situation. Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
so. So another great photo here. This is Yankee pitcher Don Larson, who's speaking to the press after his perfect game, and it's the only perfect game ever pitched in postseason history, which is pretty wild. It was actually done in the 1966 World Series for the for the Brooklyn Dodgers. What do you think of this photo of Don Larson and his incredible accomplishment?
It's amazing. There have only been 24 perfect games in history, and none by the same pitcher. So every single one by a different pitcher.
And
That's
you
how
did his
much.
in the World Series.
That's how much it tells you it's a special thing when it happens.
Yeah.
There's been a
Did
lot
he?
of almost perfect games where
Yeah.
there's one weird hit with 2 outs in the ninth.
So back to your point about a lot of baseball teams have changed names or changed cities. Why do you think that is? Why has there been so much movement? The Dodgers to LA, the Braves to Atlanta. Why do you think there's been so much movement over the years?
I'm not exactly sure. I know that there's one interesting thing about baseball compared to many of the other sports, very regional. So there's big chunks of the country that don't have baseball teams.
But you would think that
Most of
these
Middle
cities,
America is not represented in the baseball world.
you would think these cities would desperately want to hold on to their teams, and
Yeah.
it just seemed like there were just a lot. Speaking of that, the Athletics there on the left have been to many different places. They were in Philadelphia, there
Mhm.
in Oakland, they were all over the place, and of course now they're rumored to be moving to Las Vegas. I don't know. I find that interesting to me that some teams stay put and stay forever, like the Yankees or the Orioles, and other teams move to multiple cities within a couple decades. So.
I think what you're looking at is, first of all, the tenure, the length of time we're going back for this sport versus other sports is much longer ago. In a lot of cases. So there's more span of time to cover. So of course you're going to have more movement over a longer period of time. That's first of all. Second of all, I think you're looking at, because it was an older sport. There wasn't a lot of money in these sports back then. There really wasn't.
True. True.
So the sport wasn't in a financially healthy place. TV revenue wasn't flowing in with hundreds of millions of dollars to keep these teams all in good shape financially. So a lot of the success that happened financially happened much later. So a lot of these teams needed to move to just survive, so.
A lot of the players, about 2/3 of them in the pros back then, had other jobs. They had day
Right.
jobs, and
That's
they would
that
play at
speaks to
night.
the point. They
Yeah.
weren't getting big salaries. They weren't signing max contracts, 50 million a year contracts. They were,
Mhm.
I
That's
don't know
right.
what the dollar values were, but they were low. They were, $10 a week or something crazy.
What do you think about a 1947 program? 10 cents. I love
Right.
that.
Gives you a
Oh
little
man,
sense of,
those are the days. 10
today it'd
cents.
be $10.
So this is an interesting photo. The Brooklyn Dodger rookie hopefuls work out at spring training in 1948. And there was just hundreds of them there. And back then, apparently, the teams would do this. They would open up to anybody who would want to come, and they would get 200 or 300 guys showing up for the 2 weeks to try out for these situations.
What was the year here?
1948,
48.
the Brooklyn Dodgers.
Mhm.
So is that something that you would go do? Just go try it and see if you can try to make a team.
Back then, maybe when the athletes they weren't all, they were smoking in the dugouts and stuff.
I was reading that they had 300 guys show up to this particular one, and only 20 guys made it. So It's really fascinating to see how it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, we got minor leagues and single A, double A, triple A. You got college baseball. So many more feeder programs.
Yeah, and more specialized everything. You have a pitcher that'll come in and get one guy out and then back out again.
So on the left is that great photo we already looked at from Game 3 of the 1955 World Series, Brooklyn Dodgers. And then just a fantastic photo there of Ted Williams, one of the greatest hitters ever. He was 22 years old, and he was demonstrating his batting stroke as a lefty. What a classic photo that is, one of the greatest hitters ever. Maybe some people think he was the greatest pure hitter ever. Not home run hitter, but pure hitter.
I think Tony Gwynn was, but
yeah, there's a debate between those two probably. There's the Ted Williams.
The greatest pitchers of our era, Maddox, Glavine, they used to talk about how this tiny number of times when all of them combined only got Tony Gwynn out something like 4 times or something insane that you can't even believe the stat is real. But if you listen to Smoltz and Glavine and these guys talk about trying to pitch to Tony Gwynn, it's mind blowing. They had a tremendous amount of respect for him. They did not want to pitch to him because he was going to hit the ball.
That's right. That's exactly right. You'll see on the right there, there was an interim stop between Boston and Atlanta, and that was the Milwaukee Braves. They actually moved to Milwaukee for 10 years. Mm-hmm. So pretty interesting. They've had multiple stops. So this is a pretty interesting one here of Johnny Bench, 1970. He was one of the greatest players in history, maybe the greatest catcher ever.
Mm-hmm.
World Series champion for Cincinnati. And then on the right is a guy who's just a legend, and that was Satchel Paige. He played till he was 42 years old and apparently was still pitching really, really effectively deep into his late 30s. One of the great kind of tricky guys, had a lot of different pitches in his bag.
Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts on these two?
Oh, just legends. Legends at their position. You hear about them your entire life. I watched Johnny Bench a little bit, but they're incredible.
See on the right there, another 10-cent program for the Chicago Cubs at Wrigley Field. Of course, they still have Wrigley Field. And you think about that franchise had a 90-year drought until they finally won it a couple of years back.
The Cubs, yeah. Do you know what they were called originally, Tom?
What?
The Whales.
Oh, wow.
Chicago Whales, yeah.
Yeah. I was actually happy for them because the Orioles were not in it that year, and it felt like so much pain for that city that they finally.
And they're the only team that doesn't have a mascot.
Yeah. Well, they have the chicken all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's right. So really great picture here, Willie Mays on the left. And a lot of people, you can see here the note, it says arguably the greatest all-around ball player in Major League history. And there's some people that still believe that because he could literally do everything. Singles, doubles, triples, home runs, stolen bases. He could play every single position on the field. And he just was an incredible, incredible athlete. Willie Mays. They still talk about him all the time.
Yeah.
And then on the right there, really interesting, Yogi Berra takes issue with umpire's safe call on Jackie Robinson. And that was one of his 4 stolen home runs that he got. He actually stole home on that play. And Yogi Berra obviously didn't agree. He thought he got it.
Not loving that at all.
So, and that was in the World Series. So any thoughts on these legendary photos?
Just some of the best there ever was.
Yeah. This one on the right over here was not that long ago, 1991 All-Star Game. I was just graduating from Virginia at that time. So interesting to see the pamphlets as they come along. So here, top left is Roger Hornsby when he hit his first career home run off Brooklyn Robins pitcher Jeff Pfeiffer and goes on to play 23 years in the pros, Roger Hornsby. One of the greatest ever, obviously. And then Bill Mazeroski on the left, bottom. That was his first home run in his first season with the Pirates. And he was one of the real legends in Pittsburgh. Then on the top, right up there, you got Babe Ruth hitting his 710th career home run against the Brooklyn Dodgers. He did that at Braves Field in Boston. And then this was pretty interesting down on the bottom right. In 1913, Ebbets Field, that's the old Ebbets Field, made its debut as the Brooklyn Dodgers home and played host to the Philadelphia Phillies. There was over 10,000 fans in attendance that withstood cold temperatures only to see the Phillies spoil the day with a 1-0 win. And the cost of that ballpark was $750,000 to build Ebbets Field. And I just look at that now, and they're building $7 billion stadiums.
That's a lot though for back then. 750,000.
Yeah, pretty crazy. And they had to build it right in downtown Brooklyn. So I don't know how they were able to approve that site, but really interesting. And then a great program over here on the right.
They gave them an offer they couldn't refuse. Are you kidding me?
That's right. We want to build Ebbets Field.
We know how it happened. We're just not sure exactly the details.
Exactly. And on the right there, great program between the Yankees and Dodgers. They had some real slugfests over the years. That would have been a pretty cool game to go to.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
So this one's interesting. Yogi Berra, third ain't so bad if nothing's hit at you. I love that. Of course, I played a little bit of third when I played for ASP, but that's the hot corner, they call it.
Hot corner.
And then really cool base here. This was the last game Babe Ruth played. They pulled the base up and they memorialized it for him, put his number and name on it, and gave it to him as a memorial. So that was pretty cool.
That's cool.
And you see a great picture of him early in his career actually sliding into home base. Pretty interesting to see some of the old pictures. They didn't have nearly the equipment they do today. And then the Cincinnati Redlegs in 1956. So they were the Reds. Then they went to the Redlegs. Then they went back to the Reds. This was
They were actually the first pro baseball team, and they were called the Cincinnati Red Stockings.
Red Stockings, right?
Yeah, and then they became the Red Legs, and then Red Sox, and then I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Red Stockings. That's how they started.
Really interesting. You're right. The first professional club in America. And then to the right there, a 1933 program, 1933 World Series between the Giants and the Washington Senators. This is back when Washington had a team. And this was at the Polo Grounds, which was a real famous venue back then. So it's just really cool to look at some of these old programs. So this was very interesting. Ellison Hoover, New York Tribune, April 24th, 1921. And now you know why they call it home plate. It didn't change its shape from a flat circular iron plate to a stone or marble square until 1872. And I was reading that the first plates before 1872, they essentially would take manholes covers off and put them at the home plate and at the different bases. So they play with manhole covers. Any thoughts about why they call it home plate and that it was a metal plate they were pitching across?
I mean, that's an interesting fact that sort of lets you know kind of the evolution and where the terminology comes from.
You can see Babe Ruth crossing again to the right after one of his home runs, and he's crossing across what the plate looks like today. So it was changed after 1872. But it makes sense now why they call it home plate. I get it. Because there's a metal iron plate. You can see everybody standing around with their hats on. That's pretty funny.
Yeah. It's a gentleman's pastime.
So here's a picture top left in Griffith Stadium, 1926. This is where the Washington Senators played. And that's legendary ace Walter Johnson, probably their greatest player ever. He struck out a dozen as the A's batters were facing him in a 15-inning 1-0 win on opening day. He outdueled Eddie Rommel in a game that took 2 hours and 33 minutes to play. So imagine that. They got it down to 2 hours and 33 minutes in 15 innings. That was 6 additional innings. So they were playing really fast back then. So what do you think about Walter Johnson?
I think that's a very cool historical photo. It's an interesting uniform. I mean,
he's the greatest player to ever play for the Senators. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and then the bottom one is Shoeless Joe Jackson in 1911. He was one of the real famous, and they were called the Cleveland Naps. This was before they were the Indians. and he's emphatically stomping on home plate against the New York Highlanders. So pretty interesting picture there, and you can see the stands are absolutely packed. This game was really getting more and more popular. It's becoming America's pastime. Top right, you got Bill Terry of the New York Giants. He became the first major leaguer to hit a grand slam on opening day versus the Phillies. It was the first one ever in 1927. Hit a grand slam. And then bottom right, Dolph Kemmel. This was pretty interesting. He's one of baseball's strongest men ever. They said that back then he was considered kind of like an Iron Man and would lift weights all the time. He could hit really long, jacked home runs. He played for Brooklyn.
Cool.
So looking at this top left, that's Hank Aaron. Hit his 715th, passing Babe Ruth as the all-time leader. So what a huge milestone. He was able to pass the Babe. And this was a painting of him in 1966, the first year the Braves were in Atlanta. And then bottom left, you got Mickey Mantle and Roger Maris of the Yankees. They were part of that incredible team we showed earlier where they had about 10 Hall of Famers on it.
Yeah, literally.
How in the world did they assemble that team? Then you've got the rookie who's just been reinstated, Pete Rose. 21 Greenhorn would earn a walk and come around to score on the Frank Robinson home run. How cool is that? His first run scored was on Frank Robinson's home run.
That's cool.
And then you got Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig on the bottom right. They were on teammates with the two on the left, as you see. So you just were so stacked in New York. Any thoughts about these legendary photos?
I mean, these are true legends right here. This is some of the best of all time.
Even if they had just one of these four guys, it would have been incredible for the Yankees. But they had Mickey Mantle, Roger Maris, Babe Ruth, and Lou Gehrig.
Crazy.
I mean, come on. Reggie Jackson of the Yankees on the top left there, those 1977 World Series. They won it in Game 6. He won the series on this hit. They won 4-2 against the Athletics. What an incredible, legendary Jack to win the whole series. And then bottom left, you got Albert Pujols, one of the best players in the 90s, early 2000s. Definitely going to.
I remember one time I was at spring training, and everybody playing was very big. And Pujols came up to the plate, and he was a rookie, or he had just been called up. And I've never seen a bigger looking baseball player in my time watching. He was a monster. He was so huge compared to these other big guys. It was crazy.
You know, there's a couple guys that have connected like that, and you knew it was gone. Like as soon as it was off the bat, McGuire was the same way. Every time McGuire, when he connected, but Pujols had that connection. You could hear it, and it was just gone. He had no chance. Yeah,
I mean, McGuire. The power of McGuire was insane. I know that he had a little help along the way with some substances, but meaning steroids. But I ran into him. I was working down in South Florida at a famous waterfront restaurant, and I ran into a lot of these modern players, and I ran face first into McGuire's chest. We were coming around a corner through some tables, and I almost knocked myself out. It felt like I hit something that was steel.
Wasn't he just all steel, the whole
I looked
body?
down when I came to for a second because my face hit his chest. Like, it was crazy. And I'm this shy of 6 foot. And I looked down and I saw his arms, and they were Popeye arms. Like, his arms were like my leg. His forearms were like my leg. And I just
said you've never seen any arms like that before.
Never. I looked down, and his forearms were like this big. And Canseco was the same way.
Yeah. They call them the Bash Brothers for a reason. Yeah. What about Detroit Tigers' Ty Cobb there in the middle? What a legendary player he was, Ty Cobb.
Incredible.
Then this is a picture here of Babe Ruth with the Red Sox. So he spent time with the New York Yankees, time with the Red Sox, times with
the Bambino.
and the Boston Braves. So he was with different teams throughout.
The curse of the Bambino when they traded him to New York.
That's right. Upper right there, that's Walter Johnson again with the Washington Nationals. I'm sorry, with the Washington Senators. And that's President Calvin Coolidge. So obviously the politicians wanted to get involved in the national pastime as well. since it was gotten so popular. Great picture there on the right of Joe DiMaggio.
Yeah,
hitting a
look at
home run.
DiMaggio's the power he's getting out of his hips and his shoulders right there.
Right. Unbelievable. This was
Wow.
one of his big home runs in the World Series.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is he dated Marilyn Monroe after
Mhm.
both Kennedys. So the Kennedys both dated her, and then Joe DiMaggio dated her. That's a really interesting factoid. And then there's Roberto Clemente, the greatest pirate ever.
Mhm.
Just an astounding player in the late 80s, early 90s. Already in the Hall of Fame, by the way. Top left, Jackie Robinson when he was pro debut, and he was in the Negro League with the Kansas City Monarchs. Really interesting picture there early in his career. Stan Musial, bottom left, another great Cardinal. This was an interesting picture here in the top middle. Honus Wagner was a great player for Pittsburgh Pirates in 1917, and they did a really good job taking old photos and colorizing them. I thought that was really fascinating, what it looks like when they colorize it. What do you think of that?
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating.
That's cool, right?
Yeah.
What it would have looked like.
Yeah.
And then this was really cool. Jim Thorpe, who a lot of people think, including our father, think is the greatest athlete in history.
Yeah.
This was 1 year after winning the decathlon and pentathlon both. He won both of them in the same Olympics. And a year later joins the New York Giants baseball team. He also played pro football, by the way, played in the NFL for a couple of years. What do you think of this picture of Jim Thorpe and
I
his
think athleticism-wise, him and Bo Jackson are the greatest athletes America's ever produced.
probably maybe Deion Sanders?
No, even Dion says that he wasn't in the league with Bo Jackson.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think
I
Jim
think
Thorpe
Bo
was.
Jackson and Jim Thorpe are the two greatest
Yeah.
athletes to ever play professional
Wouldn't you have
sports.
loved to watch Jim Thorpe play? I mean, it just would have been such an honor to see somebody who's that good at everything. He played like
Yeah.
everything.
Yep.
Yeah. He
And
won the decathlon.
how about when he won the Olympics in Germany when someone stole his cleats and he had to run in cleats he found in the trash can that didn't even fit,
And he still won.
and he won. Yeah, it was insane.
How do you win the decathlon and the pentathlon in the same Olympics? Like that just doesn't happen.
He's just on another level of athleticism.
Good Lord.
And by the way, he's beating the best athletes in the world. So it's
I
not like,
know. I know. And then there's a good picture of Alex Rodriguez. He's the new owner of the Minnesota Timberwolves. Was a great player for the Yankees. He has not yet been inducted, but I'm sure he will be
he will be.
sometime soon.
Yeah.
We shall see. But he's really made a huge career, post career in business and done
Yeah.
really well. My favorite player of all time, Cal Ripken Jr. This is his rookie card with the Orioles, and that was the year they won the World Series, 1983. And then right to the right of that is when he played for the Charlotte AAA team. And that was the year before he made his debut with the Orioles. And it's really funny that he played AAA baseball in the city where I live, here in Charlotte, North Carolina. What do you think of those two photos?
Very cool. Also my favorite player. So
Yeah, just an amazing player. And he just did it right. He was the Iron Man, set the all-time record most games in a row. I just couldn't admire him more, you know. To the right, you got Frank Thomas. He was a basher with the Sox, one of the best hitters ever. Barry
nicknamed
Bonds.
the Big Hurt.
Yeah, the Big Hurt. That's right. You got Barry Bonds there on the bottom left. A lot of people think he might have been the best hitter ever. He's definitely in those top 5 consideration. When I say hitter, I mean like all-around hitter.
Yeah.
Ken Griffey Jr., also in the Hall of Fame, really excellent player. I think he was better than his father. His father was a Cincinnati
Oh,
Red.
no question. No question he was better than his dad.
He was, for a while there, he was the best player in baseball.
Yeah. The coolest thing was watching Ken Griffey play with his father in the same outfield.
That was cool. It was Seattle, right? Seattle
Yeah.
Mariners. That was very cool.
It was really neat because you don't get to see that very often.
And then you got Derek Jeter, who was a 12-time All-Star for the Yankees, won 3 World Series, had a really great career as well.
Mm-hmm.
So all these great players were getting up more towards the modern era. Top left, you got Hank Aaron. Bottom left, you got Rod Carew. A lot of people think he might have been one of the greatest pure hitters ever, and he was definitely the greatest bunter and stolen base guy ever.
Yeah, he was a really good player.
He was just one of those guys who set the table for the rest of the team all the time. You got Willie Mays there in the top center. You got the guy who you think is the best hitter ever. He might have been. He was the toughest out ever. He would foul about 20 pitches off in a row.
Yeah.
Tony Gwynn, San Diego. Then you got Aaron Judge. He's one of the best current players for sure. Ted Williams, when he had his stamp actually released in Fenway Park. And then maybe the best stolen base guy ever. I think he was, and that was Ricky
No, he
Henderson.
was.
Yeah. The guy was just a speedster on the paths, and he was a terror to teams when he got on.
And the funniest thing about Ricky Henderson was he would always speak about himself in third person back when nobody else was doing that.
He was Dion. That's what he was. He was Dion on the baseball
Yeah.
field.
He always called himself Ricky Henderson. It was so funny. It was interesting. In the upper left corner there, that is
Hank Aaron.
Hank Aaron. He hit that home run.
Yep.
And there was a lot of racial tensions in the country.
Right.
And there were a lot of threats coming in about him being on the team. And these two guys jumped down when he hit that home run and chased him. And everybody was terrified for a second. But they were so jubilant and they were the first, they couldn't stand it. They were so proud of him. They ran out there and they were like high-fiving and hugging him as he's going around the bases.
Yeah, I think people were worried they were going to harm him, but they weren't. They were trying to hug him.
They loved him so much. And it was an iconic moment of where baseball really brought people together. And it had a big imprint on society.
Do you know what that home run was? It's when he broke Babe Ruth.
That's right.
Yeah, 715.
Right. It was.
Yeah.
It was a huge moment for the country, not just for him, but that racial tensions were starting to heal, and there was a visible thing where an excellent player was embraced by another race, and like on the field, on TV, everyone saw it, and it really kind of helped solidify the idea that, what are we doing? Like, let's unify around this. And baseball is has a great history for moving us away from really dark times in our history with racial tensions, and bringing players together and kind of moving our country past some of those really bad ideas that we had.
It's a really good point.
Yeah.
So, pure baseball hitter of all time. You think it's Tony Gwynn? Do you think it's Barry Bonds? Do you think it's Ken Griffey Jr.? Do you think it's Babe Ruth?
I think hitting-wise, the greatest ever was Tony Gwynn. The best home run hitter of all time was, I think, Bonds, and followed by Babe Ruth.
Yeah, I think so.
Best base stealer was Ricky Henderson.
Oh, no, that guy there in the top middle has something to say about it. Willie Mays. I mean, he was just so good.
Most people around baseball think Willie Mays was second best.
But when you're choosing between Hall of Famer and Hall of Famer, it gets you're splitting hairs.
Really. Yeah. The question is, who do you think the best pitcher of all time was?
Yeah, well, that's interesting.
That's a tough.
Talk about some of those pitchers. So you got Johnson there on the top left. I remember him with that lefty. He played with Seattle and he played with Arizona and a bunch of great teams.
6'9",
6'9", and he just came with the heat. And then
he was intimidating as anything.
Later in his career, after he was throwing 110, he started coming in with the 84-mile-an-hour changeups, and these guys were swinging way out in front. He was almost more devastating later in the career because they were so worried about the fastball, and he would just buckle your knees with these changeups and these curveballs. So I just remember him, and he was devastating. He really was. And then you got in the middle there Tom Seaver, the greatest Mets pitcher ever for the New York Mets. You got Roger Clemens. What a legendary career he had with multiple teams, but mainly with the Red Sox is where he made his name. Another Red Sox pitcher on the bottom left, Ramirez. Some people think he was the best pure pitcher ever. He had an incredible career, played 22 seasons. Then we have Eckersley. I know you've always been an Eckersley fan.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Love them.
the sinker ball. You do the sidearm sinker ball is really hard to hit. And then one of my favorite pitchers of all time, and I followed the Braves for a while on the National League side, and that is Greg Maddux. He had a great career with the Cubs and the Braves, and he was virtually unhittable when he was on. He had 5 full pitches that he would be able to pull out. Any thoughts about these 6?
Well, there's 6 of some of the best ever. My favorite of those is Eckersley, but I think Maddox is the greatest pitcher I've ever seen.
I think so. I agree.
Just the most unhittable.
He was surgical. He was just
He
surgical
would
around the
always
plate.
confuse you with what he was going to throw. You never understood what was coming next.
I've never seen a guy who could paint the corners like Maddox. It was so infuriating.
Yeah.
You couldn't really take a pitch because he would paint the corners.
You couldn't swing at it because it didn't look like it was going to be over the plate, but then it
Yeah.
was over the plate, and you were sitting there with your bat on your shoulder.
And Ramirez was at the top of his game, was almost unhittable at times, and so was Clemens. Clemens, when he had the heat going 105, he would just blow it right by you. It was crazy.
Yeah.
I have respect for all these guys.
Yeah.
Let's look at the development.
The main pitcher missing there is what's his name from Texas Rangers?
Yes, Nolan Ryan.
Nolan Ryan.
Absolutely.
He needs to be on that page. But
and Cy Young. You could have Cy Young.
Yeah, there's some others.
Yeah. Let's look at the baseball development timeline. The early stages of baseball, 1830s to 1860s. That's when it was informal play. You had all these stick games we looked at, all the different stick games, amateur clubs, semi-pro teams. Then you had 1870s come along, and you had the first professional league develop. You had the National League in 1876. You had the Cincinnati Red Stockings, the first team ever in 1869. That was right after the Civil War. Then the American League comes in 1901. That gives some competition to the National League. And then the first World Series in 1903. And then you had what they call the golden age of baseball. This is when it really became popular in every single living room in America, the 20s through the 40s.
Yeah.
And you had stars like Babe Ruth and many others that really just took it to a different level. It became the most popular sport in America by far. And then, of course, we talked about that incredible civil rights breakthrough by Jackie Robinson, 1947. That was a big deal.
Huge.
There's just no question, because then it paved the way for black players. And then in today's modern era, from 1960s to today, you have all the big new expanded stadiums, the sky boxes, the use of artificial turf. You had the steroid era that we had to get through in the 80s and 90s. We've kind of gotten through that now. Like you said, I think we've been able to resuscitate the game after that big black eye we took. And then, now we're sitting at 29 teams in the United States and 1 in Canada, which I found interesting. We used to have multiple in Canada. So any thoughts about any of these different eras that we've gone through?
Just a wild, long stretch of this sport being in existence. Lots of changes, some continuity as well. It's cool how it played a big role socially, helping heal the nation from a lot of bad racial wounds and bad policies that were in place. The sport in particular helped. And then I think of Muhammad Ali in boxing, same thing, like sort of helped heal the nation during times when the Vietnam era was a problem. It seemed like baseball was something people could all come back to and all unite around. And that was a really important thing for our country. So
no doubt about it. It's just fascinating to look at the development of baseball and really how fast it's come along. You're talking about 150 years, and now it's so ingrained in our society and our culture. And if you think about this game and what it's done across the world, you have 140 countries playing it now.
yeah,
So it's not just the U.S.
A lot of countries have adopted it, and it's become like their main country.
A lot of Latin American and Caribbean countries, it's their number one sport by far. Venezuela and Cuba and all these countries.
Yeah.
Dominican Republic. They're, this is what they play. Even places like Colombia, Brazil, Argentina, they all play baseball. So really fascinating to see it grow. Let's look at some of the logos. This was pretty fascinating to me. We took 2 examples. The Philadelphia Phillies You see that first one was green in 1910, and you can see the evolution of the logo and what happened through the years. We even had a bird version of it in 1981, which was pretty interesting. And you see it just continue to change all the way up until the one we have today with the Liberty Bell with a crack in it, which is kind of interesting. And then you have on the Cleveland Indians side, of course, they had a different name back in 1939, but then they became the Indians in 1946. And you can
And
see
that's because they had a couple of Native Americans on the team.
that's right. That's exactly right. And you can see that their Indian logo has changed a little bit over the years too, all the way up until the point in 2014 where they decided to drop the Indian name, and then they eventually became the Guardians, which they are today. So any thoughts about the transformation of logos? And if you looked at all 30 teams, of course, it'd be a similar situation.
Yeah, I think they just got better at branding and making it more palatable to sell shirts and hats and all that.
I was just in Cleveland a couple of weeks ago, and just talking to some people on the street. They still aren't happy about this. They still want the Indians back. Kind of like
Yeah,
the Redskin fans feel. They don't understand it. They don't. They didn't think it was insulting.
right.
And
It was actually celebrating that it was Native Americans on their team. They were proud of it. So it was,
right,
anyway.
they're still confused all these years later about why that happened. But so let's look at how baseball got its name. I thought it would just be a simple thing because you run around the bases, but not really. It was based largely on the bat and ball game that it's based on, but baseball was used early on with references appearing as early as the 17th and 18th centuries. The name emerged from common practice of players running between bases, but it was first written as a reference in a children's book in 1744 with a description and woodcut of the game based on a triangular field. So it'd be kind of like rounders. You can see here baseball is referred to in this kid's book. So any thoughts about the name baseball coming from this kid's book in 1744?
That's interesting. You definitely assume that had to do with the bases.
Doesn't that look like a book that you would read to your boys? I mean, something
Yeah,
similar.
yeah.
Talking
We
about
have
this base
we
game
have
that you
some
hit it and
history
you
of
run around.
baseball books of like
Yeah.
famous old players.
Yeah. Well, now you can tell them where it got its name.
Hmm.
There you go. So, what are the rules of baseball? The main goal is for the batting team to score more runs than the opposing team by hitting the ball and running around the bases. The game is played in 9 innings, where each team bats and fields. The fielding team attempts to prevent the batting team from scoring by making outs. And so we talked a little bit about the innings and outs. Striking out, a batter is struck out after 3 strikes. Strike is called when a batter swings and misses or the ball crosses the strike zone across the plate. Strike zone is the area above the plate that the batter must hit the ball to avoid being called a strike. And usually that goes from their knee to their shoulder. So it's knee to shoulder and across the plate. Foul balls that land outside the foul lines is a foul ball. A batter can hit 2 foul balls before it counts as a strike. And then a ball is an unfair pitch that does not cross the strike zone. So if somebody throws outside the strike zone, it's a ball. And of course, if they get 4 balls, they get a walk. Scoring a run is scored when the base runner advances to home plate safely around all 4 bases. And to score, the base runner must touch all 4 bases to get a run. Fielders are 9 players in the field, including the pitcher. And they try to get the batting team out by catching the ball, tagging runners, or forcing them out at the bases. In terms of base running, you can only advance to the next base on a hit or by stealing bases. The runner cannot leave the base until the pitch ball has left the pitcher's hand. That's the original base running rule.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, now in the pros, they allow you to lead. So that's a pretty cool little change to that rule there. So any thoughts about how the rules have developed over the years? And just, I know your boys are still
Yeah, I
learning
would
these
say
rules.
most of these rules are still intact. They make a lot of sense. The goal is to get outs if you're on defense, and the goal is to that prevents runs. I think they did a pretty cool job of uniting all these different sports that are unrelated and kind of coming up with a unique situation.
I agree. I think they've largely stayed the same. We do have some slight differences here and there. And of course, baseball, both college and pro, are still tweaking and experimenting with some things. But in terms of these 7 categories, this has all remained pretty steady for a long time, over 150 years. So looking at the evolution of the ball in baseball, we looked at one earlier on the first slide. It consists of a core, typically a cork and a rubber center. And you can see it there on the top, what the core looks like. It's wrapped in yarn and then covered with leather or synthetic leather. The core is the innermost part, providing the initial shape and firmness to the ball. And you can see on the left there what it looked like in the 1830s and 1840s. 1870s, it started getting a little more like what we're used to. Then 1920s, that looks a lot more like what we play with today. And then all the way up to the ball that is today, which is really from the 20s to today, it hadn't changed that much. But back in the 1800s, it was very different. Any thoughts about those prototypes?
Yeah, I think it's kind of 2 different eras with the ball. It looks like 1830s to the 1900s is one, and then it looks like they kind of modernized after that. And it hasn't changed much, although I do think it's more juiced now.
Yeah, what is your understanding of the last 5 years or so that it's juiced it? What is your understanding of how it's changed? Have they changed the core?
Yes. I think the way they wrap it is tighter and the core is harder or something like that. So there's been a lot of denials of it, so it's hard to get the evidence to prove it. But
so I thought it was really funny to also look at the evolution of the baseball glove. So in 1900, you see there, it looks almost like a glove you'd put on and go out in the snow or something. Doesn't have the webbing between the fingers or anything. Then you see the webbing start coming in 1915, 1920, 1930. It starts looking a little more like what we're used to, but still a little strange. And then you'll see the glove just gets more and more like what we're used to over the years. I can't imagine playing with one of these old gloves. That must have been really tough.
No.
And then all the way up to, you see 2000 looks very much like the glove we're used to now that we play with.
Yeah.
Any thoughts about the gloves?
This is a more steady evolution, I think, of progress. Each one looks a little better than the last, whereas it just looks like 2 different sets of balls kind of prior to in the 1830s on.
Do Brock and Connor's gloves look like those 2018 ones, pretty much?
Yeah, pretty close.
Yeah. Really interesting to look at this and just to think about how that ball has evolved. And like you said, the core has been strung tighter, so now you get more home runs, which is what, by the way, Major League wants.
Yeah, because the steroid era was a huge step backwards in power. When they cleaned up the steroid era, they needed to do something to help the hitters.
That's right. Popularity of baseball in USA in 2024, 17.3 million people in the U.S. age 6 and older played baseball. And it was an increase from the previous year, which was 16.7 million. This is the first time there was an increase in participation in 30 years. So like we talked about earlier, there had been a steady decline for a while, but it's starting to come up again. We're starting to see more people play it, which is interesting. You'll see also the share of U.S. sports fans saying they follow baseball by age group. And this is what we suspected, that the 18 to 24s, 34% are interested, all the way up to our age, where 57 or 64% are interested. And so this is the real problem baseball has, right, that they're trying to fix.
Yeah, they need to make games faster and high scoring to get the young people.
Because you're really losing them now. I mean, it's basically half of the young people compared to the old people watch it.
Yeah.
All the way. On the right there, it's interesting. 2024 also not just had the best participation in a long time, but had the highest major league attendance since 2017, with 71.35 million fans attending games. So you're seeing them start to come back as well, which is really good for the game. Any other things you think they can do? I mean, they've gotten the game down 20 minutes in duration. They've got the ball is juiced. They've got in extra innings guys starting at second base.
I think that the only thing left to do really is make sure games don't balloon longer, and selling your stars.
You got to
Making
sell the
sure
star.
that stars for each team get a lot more celebrated and more mainstream, and people wearing their jerseys.
Ohtani, you got Ohtani, you got Aaron Judge, you got
Yeah.
Trout, you got Gunnar Henderson, these are the guys you need to be promoting for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
They
But
need to be
I think
selling jerseys with their name on the back, and people need to be saying, "I want to be just like Gunnar Henderson when I grow up."
baseball's making a comeback. I feel
Yeah,
it.
it feels like a better age for sure.
And you know when this sport reappears in the Olympics in 2028, that's going to do nothing but help the sport too.
Yeah,
It's
and
back in
it's
the
going to
Olympics.
help it internationally.
Yeah. So looking at international, latest figures were that 65 million people in 140 countries play it, which really was shocking to me. 65 million people play it. And then you see the percentage of children 6 to 17 who played the sport on a regular basis. And you saw those kind of big dips happen from 2013 on, and then they're starting to come back up again. 2023, those levels are in some cases increasing or almost tying the levels they used to be. So baseball's making a participation comeback. So thoughts about popularity of baseball around the world. It's already in 140 countries. Olympics are coming.
I think they have
Anything
an
else?
opportunity to grow the game. I hope they don't miss the opportunity. It looks like things are trending well. I think they need to be aggressive and really go for it with promoting the popularity and the stars of the game. Have the countries watching make a big deal of their stars as well. If you're from Brazil, know who your best players are, and that should help get the popularity back up.
No doubt. I agree with that. So some of the world competitions, it's going to return to the Olympics, as we said, in LA 2028. Dodger Stadium will be the official venue for baseball. So that'll be really cool. What a legendary stadium that is.
Yeah.
Be the first time the Olympics has had baseball since the 2008 Summer Olympics. So that's really cool. The World Series, of course, is the big competition that everybody watches every year, held in the U.S. and Canada in October. You have the WBSC Premier 12 as an international tournament, and it's a major event in the World Baseball and Softball Confederation. So that's an event that's held both for baseball and softball every year. It's almost like the World Championships. And then you have this new event that came out that has been really popular called the World Baseball Classic. And it happens every 4 years, and it's intended to happen in the alternate 2 years from the Olympics to be kind of the almost like the World Cup of baseball. And that's been really popular. It's been held twice. So thoughts about some of these big world competitions, and will that help with the popularity of the game?
Oh, for sure. It's just a great showcase of talent and the sport itself. So yeah, that's going to help a lot.
I completely agree. I think the more of this you have, the better. The World Baseball Classic was a brilliant idea so that you don't have 4 years where you have to wait for international competition. So I really like that. Men's College World Series, of course, is there, and we know how exciting that is every year. And I'm really looking forward to this year's as well.
Tremendous.
It's so much fun to watch. I like the 3-game series format because it goes a little faster, but you're not out if you have a bad day. So I like that a lot. So the Commissioner's Trophy there on the left, you can see it. This is something I did not realize till I did the research. The Commissioner's Trophy, it's the trophy presented every year by the Commissioner of Baseball to Major League Baseball's World Series champion. The trophy depicts the flags representing each team in the major leagues. So that was really cool. Every one of the teams is represented there in the flags. It's the only championship trophy of the Major League Professional Sports that is not named after a particular person. So that also is a really interesting fact.
That's cool. Yeah.
So what do you think of this trophy? Where do you rank it with, Stanley Cup, the Lombardi Trophy, which obviously is named for Vince Lombardi?
I think it's probably third.
You think it's third?
Yeah, behind Stanley Cup is 1 and Lombardi's 2.
You don't think NBA is above
No.
it? Okay. I kind of agree with that. I think if you win the World Series, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
It just is. So, thought this was a funny program I found here in my research. The Minneapolis Millers, the first team before the Twins. It's a 10-cent program for the Millers.
Yeah.
Pretty fun. Well, Robbie, why don't we go take a look at some classic baseball highlights, and then we'll be right back and finish out the program.
All right.
Let's go.
This is Bill Slater with news shots from our sports album showing high spots in the early career of the most important baseball individual of all time, the immortal Babe Ruth. One of Babe's most unusual home runs. The Bambino slugs this one inside the park, races for the plate to beat the relay, and just hits the dirt before the ball. Wow, that was close. Now here's Ruth as a Red Sox pitcher. He broke in as a hurler in 1914. And don't think he wasn't a great moundsman. It was because his big bat demanded everyday duty that he switched to the outfield. Here's a classic shot of the youthful Babe Ruth. Here was the idol of America, the boy from Baltimore who made baseball history. Many honors came his way, and Babe gets a special reward from his wife. Boston fans were first to recognize his greatness, but in 1920, Ruth joined the New York Yankees. Kids were always his pride, and he'd rather make them laugh than hit a home run. More honors, this time in Baltimore. The great man was a great favorite, yes, sir. No man in baseball had more friends, more followers, and he never let them down. A little clowning with the Yankees. The Babe gets organized. This is Yankee Stadium, built in 1923 mainly because of Ruth's popularity. Nick Altrock interviews the Babe. Nick's story is definitely not for our sports album. Official opening of Yankee Stadium. The Babe bangs one into the right field stands in the very first game played at the Yankees' new home grounds. Then illness caused the temporary retirement of the Sultan of Swat. But he returned in 1925 to set his sights on Ruthville, the stands in right field. Yes, sir, the Babe came back strong and met the ball even better than ever. First time at the plate after being laid up. Babe is an easy out, but after that, well, when he swung, everybody ducked. That ball blazed like a bullet when he connected. This is the sight the fans came to see. Ruth circling the sacks after a circuit clout. Ruth hit his 60 homers in 1927. Watch him, fans, as he swings around the bases. You're watching Diamond history. This was Babe Ruth, Mr. Baseball.
That's got us all aglow. He's just a man and not a freak. Joltin' Joe DiMaggio.
Joe DiMaggio, we want you and I.
He tied the mark at 44, July the 1st, you know. Since then he's hit a good 12 more. Joltin' Joe DiMaggio.
Joe DiMaggio, we want you and I.
From coast to coast, that's all you'll hear of Joe, the one-man show. He's glorified the horse-hide sphere, Joltin' Joe DiMaggio.
Joe DiMaggio, we want you and I.
He'll live in baseball's Hall of Fame. He got there blow by blow. Our kids will tell their kids his name, Joltin' Joe DiMaggio.
We dream of Joey with the line from back.
Ground ball up the middle. Long run for the shortstop. Ripken wheels, throws in time to retire Larry Sheets.
My gosh, when do you get the total perspective of this shot where he fielded that ball and threw it from? You know, he's shading him over just a little bit anyway, but
just don't look at him as a guy like Eddie Murray or even Cal, consistently over 20.
Well, he's going to watch it as it goes deep to left field.
So Kurt Young disgusted himself. Cal took a 2-1 pitch and just smacked it and ties this ball game at 2 apiece.
No doubt about it.
Here's the pitch. Cal Ripken sends one deep to left field. Back goes Allred. It is out of here. Tie game.
like that, it's a 1-1 ball game. Cal Ripken with a home run.
All right, Robbie. Well, final thoughts, man.
Final
Baseball.
thoughts. This has been a lot of fun researching. There was a lot of interesting history behind baseball, the creation of it, and how it evolved through different social evolutions, wars, etc. There's a lot of interesting facts. 24 no hitters is a tiny number for a sport that's been around for hundreds of years. But another thing that's more unique than that is there have been 15 unassisted triple plays, which is the most unique event probably in all of sports, I would think. But there's so much history to study with baseball. So many older generations love it because they grew up on it, and it's exciting to see it making a comeback. There's some of the most exciting players I've ever seen play baseball are currently in the league. I think of Ellie De La Cruz and some of these hitters and some of the pitchers that are out there. There's a lot of talented players. They're not juiced anymore. So this is pure physical specimen, hard work showing up. They've perfected their craft without any kind of assistance. They just go out there and they throw with their dad when they're 4 years old, and they keep working at it. And it's cool. It's a great sport to watch. It's a great sport to play. It's enjoyable. Its family memories are so readily available for going to stadiums and getting that Fenway Frank hot dog or catching that fly ball. Do you know you have a 1 in 300,000 chance of getting hit by a baseball? So it's not zero. I mean, there's definitely fly balls coming your way sometimes. It's exciting. You better have your glove ready.
Didn't you and the boys catch one at the Durham Bulls game?
We got 6.
6? Wow.
It wasn't a Durham Bulls game. It was a really cool showcase called Home Run Derby X. And I recommend to everybody, if it comes to your town, check it out. They move the plate forward and they start throwing meatballs, and these guys are crushing the ball. And each team that hits a home run, it's competitive. And there's like 4 or 6 teams, and it's full of ex-players. Manny Ramirez and all these guys are out there. And it's just funny to watch them hitting these meatball batting practice home runs, and they're crushing the ball, and everyone gets them balls all over the place because they're hitting so many.
Is there anything more exciting for a kid who's at a baseball game with his dad than to get a baseball? Like, it's so
fun.
It just makes them lifelong fans, is what it does.
Yeah, they never forget that moment.
They're going to love baseball forever.
Yeah.
Because it's just, do you see why it's become such a big part of our culture as a country?
Yeah, it's in the movies. Durham Bulls are featured in Bull Durham with Kevin Costner, one of the best sports movies I've ever seen.
But I don't think the baseball league, especially major leagues, would be what it is today, except that they had all those great players from 1900 to about 1960, all those unbelievable Hall of Fame, DiMaggio, Babe Ruth,
Sure.
Maris. So it became in our culture. It became part
Willie
of our
Mays. Willie
Yeah.
Mays,
Jackie Robinson,
Jackie Robinson. So many.
It's become ingrained in American culture. That's what it's done.
Yeah. Yeah, there's been scandals. There's been incredible drama. Just a really, really cool sport with a long history. You could talk about it for weeks and days. Ken Burns has an amazing special on it. So it's just been a lot of fun to research and talk about some of the highlights of kind of where the sport evolved from and where we are today.
When you lived down in Florida, you said your favorite month was March because you used to go to all of the spring training games. And you said it was just such a unique because you used to get all the players coming into your restaurant.
Autographs, Josh Beckett and all the Marlins and Pudge Rodriguez.
So unique.
All the Cardinals and all the Braves. And they would come into my restaurant every night during spring training. It was the best time. And it was just a party atmosphere. And the players were having a good time. David Justice and all the Chipper Jones. I remember when Ryan Klesko signed his big contract and he came in and everybody was throwing back wheat smoothies with him. And he was, of course, buying because he had this huge contract now. It's just so much fun around baseball. And it's a really cool sport. And it's just fun to follow and to watch and to play and to go throw with
you saw McGuire
with the boys in the backyard.
I knew you saw McGuire and Canseco. I didn't realize you saw Chipper Jones. That's cool.
I talked to Canseco for a while. Chipper Jones, I knew somebody who was really good friends with him. Michael Tucker and all the pitchers. Leland and Tony La Russa used to come in together. They were good friends, which was really cool. But when the pitchers walked in, you knew it. They were all 6'5". They looked like football players. They just looked different. The pitchers looked different. When they would walk in, you couldn't tell who it was until they got closer to you, but almost every single one of them was just a beast.
So there's a debate going on in all sports about, is it better to have 3 or 4 really great teams that win every year and dominate? I know Colin Cowherd talks all the time about that's actually better for the league when you have Lakers versus Celtics. You'll have much bigger ratings. You have much more interest. Or is it better for the league to have more parity like the NFL is trying to have, where you have 8 new teams make the playoffs every year and you have cities have actual hope that their team can actually be good one day? Because it seems like baseball is going towards the NBA model. You're going to have 6 teams every single year that are contending for the World Series. And you're going to have the bottom end teams, the A's, for instance, that are never going to be there because they're just never going to have the payroll.
It comes down to salary cap. I mean, if baseball had a salary cap, there would be parity. And since it doesn't have a salary cap, there's no parity. You'll have usually one small market, small payroll team sneak in there, and the rest are all the big time payroll guys of the Dodgers and the Yankees every year. So, and the Mets spend a lot of money, but they don't ever win. So, although they had a good year last year. But for the most part, it's pretty predictable that all the teams except one, you can kind of foreshadow when you see all the offseason deals and this amazing hitter goes to the Yankees and this amazing hitter goes to the Dodgers. And you say, well, they're going to be good again. Of course they are. Until they have a salary cap, they're not serious about having any kind of parity. But I think that basketball actually now has parity because they have a salary cap. And the argument is it's better when there's no parity in basketball. I don't agree with that. I think it's a lot more fun when you get Minnesota Timberwolves in there.
Me too. OKC.
It may not score on the TV Richter scale like that, but I think that it's good for the sport. Every team gets enthusiastic and says this is our year, and truly means it and believes in it. Baseball, if you're the Milwaukee Brewers, you don't think it's your year. You know what I mean? If you're the Miami Marlins, it's not your year because go look at your payroll.
We just did an episode, guys, a couple weeks ago that was a pretty good one. You should watch it. I'm going to put it in the description down below. And it was about sports analytics. And in that episode, we talked about the great movie in 2011 called Moneyball, where the entire thing was about how the Oakland A's, who had 1/10 the salary of the Yankees, watched the Yankees and studied them and studied their statistics and studied everything about the way they put their team together, and were able to the next year make the playoffs with the lowest payroll in baseball. And it was a movie and it's fictional, but it's possible because last year you saw the Detroit Tigers come in with a $50 million payroll, and they were playing teams with a $300 million payroll, 1/6.
Yeah.
And so it is possible, but I still wonder if it's good for the league to have these kind of disparities where essentially
No, it's not.
the Dodgers, the Yankees, the Phillies, and the Houston Astros are always going to be there.
Baseball has to find its way to get to a salary cap so that teams generally are apples to apples. You can't have the Yankees playing the Miami Marlins. The Yankees are going to win 95% of those games or more. It's not competitive. So you can't have teams like the Marlins every year not successful. Ultimately, you're going to have to move them up and the Yankees down a little. And
they were just saying these Boston Celtics payroll next year is going to be $500 million. That's their payroll.
Yeah.
And that's $200 million more than any NFL team. And NFL teams have 3 times the players on their rosters.
But I don't think ultimately Boston will end up there because they're talking about having to shop a lot of their expensive veterans. So,
but my point is, they're at $500 million, and you have the Hornets at 170. There's just a huge disparity. Like a team that is in that bracket can't compete with the Boston Celtics.
Yeah.
So, so that's my only concern. I think baseball's making a comeback. I'm really excited about it.
I love the rule changes. I love the players. Some of the most, Ellie De La Cruz, I could watch all day long. The boys have his highlights on all the time. Super exciting. There's so many good players now. And the rule changes have sped the game up. It's a more exciting, fast game. And they're doing a really good job. I think they just need to look at the salary cap situation, and they need to continue to market their stars. And I think they're going to be in a really healthy place in the next 10 years.
And by the way, college baseball is in a really good spot. The players are getting better and better at the college level. And so that's feeding the teams. And
right.
The teams, I think.
And why is that? Because NIL is keeping college players in the league instead of going to single A baseball where they might not make it,
That's right.
But you can make $1 million a year playing in college, or you can go make $70,000 a year or whatever it is on some single A minor league team or something.
Well, guys, we hope you really enjoyed this walk down memory lane with us. Baseball is such a special sport to this country. It's such a special sport now to the world. We loved going through the history with you, all the incredible photographs of all the great players over the decades and the eras, the rules of the game, popularity of the game, and definitely drop us a comment of what you think of baseball in general, where you think it is right now. Is it in good shape? And tell us a little bit about what you thought of the episode. So like the video and subscribe to the channel, and really happy you joined us tonight.
Yeah, I really appreciate everyone joining us. And I recommend everybody out there, go check out a baseball game live. Go check out, if you have a minor league team in your city, go there. If you have an opportunity to go to a big league park, they're amazing experiences. You can take your kids. You got old timers have their little charts out tracking every pitch and every thing. You got scouts everywhere. It's just a lot of fun. You can catch a fly ball, get a hot dog, and create a lot of memories. So go check it out. Thanks for joining us on our episode, and hopefully we did it some justice. And it was a lot of fun doing some research and looking at all the photos and kind of going back through the history of all this. It's been an amazing sport for our country, and check it out.
And it's been so much fun following Rob's twins and their journey through baseball. They absolutely love it. It's their favorite sport. Every time I go see Rob, I try to go to a game and watch them play, and it's just a lot of fun. So very special for the family to watch Brock and Connor as they develop. So guys, thank you so much, and we'll see you next time on the Sports Guys. Have a great one. All right, guys. Well, welcome to the Four Bros podcast. We are so excited to be on tonight with Brock and Connor and Rob. And tonight we get to talk about their favorite sport, which is baseball. So, guys, how you doing?
Good.
Yeah. Doing well?
All right. This is Connor, of course. He's going to tell us a little bit about baseball, his love for baseball.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit, guys. What do you love about baseball? Do you like defense better? Do you like offense better? What's your favorite position?
I honestly think
I really think that I like pitcher.
Pitcher?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm not really accurate, but I'm good.
You're getting better?
Yeah.
What do you like about pitching?
Striking people out, the vibe.
Striking
Nice.
people out in the vibe. Okay.
Connor, what about you? What's your favorite?
Connor, what's your favorite position?
I honestly think that I like playing anywhere. I just whenever they put me in outfield, like
Okay.
I mean, I kind of like outfield, but like when I'm at shortstop, I don't feel the best at shortstop.
You don't?
Even though
short and first.
even though everybody thinks I'm a shortstop, no, it just hurts when I throw it all the way.
You've got a really good arm. That's
In
why.
fact, half of the time I overthrew it. No,
Do you like throwing it all the way across the diamond, though?
It's fun whipping the ball like that.
I mean, Connor hasn't been pitcher in the game.
Yeah, because I stopped. Whenever they need me in the game, because I need to throw. Because whenever they need me, I need to throw heat. They're just saving me for heat.
What do you like about outfield? Do you like to be able to track down the big fly balls?
Well, I just like to actually get like the ball. Like I just ground it, throw it back in. It's fun. Like it's actually easy.
That's
Do you know another good vibe?
What?
Catching a pop fly. I don't
Is
know
it?
why. It's good, but
Yeah.
literally.
That's awesome.
I mean, it's in the air. You have a guarantee of missing majority.
Brock, when you're in the field, what position do you like the most other than pitcher?
Outfield?
You like
Outfield?
No, I'm saying, did you say outfield?
in the field, like anywhere, any position.
Infield or outfield?
Infield, outfield, first base, catching, whatever.
Yeah, I'm not built for catching.
Probably
The thinker.
first, probably.
First base.
Yeah.
Or second.
You're tall, so it's super helpful.
I always played third base and first base. Those are the two I played in high school.
Mm-hmm.
It was good. So what do you guys like about hitting?
Hitting?
Yeah.
Hitting the ball, like actually hitting runs. I've been learning how to hit balls, which is helpful because last game I actually got a piece of it on. I hit it when I hit a pop fly and got out. It went like it went high up. So I mean, if I got that ball maybe like right here on the bat, maybe I would go.
Is it a lot easier to hit the coach pitch or the kid pitch?
I don't really make a big deal about both. I like to hit. But I think
Is it easier to hit the machine or when a kid's throwing it?
Probably kid throwing it.
Yeah, because they don't throw as hard.
Nope, that's not the reason. It's
Why
just it's more fun when kids are pitching.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Because they're actually pitching to you. Like it's fun.
Have you hit it back to the pitcher yet, or do you always hit it past the pitcher?
Past the pitcher.
Hmm.